Howdy folks, and welcome back once again to World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles. Today we've got something slightly different for you. What we're going to be seeing today is one of the round 1 matches between OMNI's Freedom Clan and Against All Odds in the King of the Sea tournament, which is a community tournament organised by the community, although with some sponsorship from Wargaming. The first 2 rounds and the quarterfinals have already been played out, and this Sunday we're going to be seeing the semi-finals played between OMNI's Masochist clan and Caper Commandos, and the Tora clan and OMNI's Freedom clan, followed immediately by the final to decide the overall tournament winner. The prize for the winning clan is a special flag which you can fly from your ship, donated by Wargaming. You only hold on to the flag for as long as you hold on to the title. The flag itself gives you, I think it's 50% bonus commander XP and 15% credit reward for every game you play with this flag flying from your ship. The King of the Sea flag is an exclusive flag which is only available to the winners of the Kings of the Sea tournament. However, you can lose the flag if you fail to defend your title. In a bit of a stroke of irony, the 2 finalists in the previous season's tournament crowning the Winter King were OMNI and Against All Odds. And in this first round match in the January King of the Sea tournament, it's OMNI versus Against All Odds. OMNI won the final of the previous season against AAO 3-1, so this may even be a little bit of a grudge match. Now, a couple of things to bear in mind. This is very high level competitive play. The guys playing World of Warships here for us today, they know what they're doing. So you are unlikely to see suicidal charges straight up the middle of the map right into the face of all the enemy battleships and cruisers. That's not going to happen today. Ah, but Jingles, you say? I can see there are ships getting sunk already according to the combat messages that are popping up over the minimap. Well, yes, those are the commentators. What happens is a training room is set up and 2 Hosho class carriers, tier 4s, are attached to each team. These guys then torpedo themselves, recover their aircraft, sink, and then they're free to use the free camera to rove around the battlefield, commentating on the gameplay. And that's what I'm going to be doing this weekend on Sunday when I join Chrysantos and Isolate to commentate on the finals live on Twitch. All of the links that you need are going to be down below in the video description. For now, let's see how this game plays out. We're initially following the battle from the perspective of Elrog GA here in his Benson for OMNI. Now, he's dropping smoke even before he's entered the cap circle. OMNI are heading for Bravo and Charlie, and their carrier are sending dive bombers to scout Alpha for enemy destroyers. Why is Elrog dropping his smoke this far away from the cap circle? He's not even inside the cap circle yet. Well, he's not dropping it for himself. He's dropping it for the battleships and cruisers that are following him up this flank. Those guys there. That's who the smoke's for. He's now outside of the smoke screen, and his team now have that lovely little line of smoke and the iceberg at the end of the line of smoke to shield them from observation by the enemy team. Elrog, on the other hand, outside of the smoke, inside the cap circle, and with clear lines of view, he's now in a position to spot targets for the rest of his team, who are advancing under the cover of the smoke screen. Spotting targets, however, while it's something that a destroyer can do, and is one of the primary roles of a destroyer in a random battle, isn't really the primary role of a destroyer in a competitive game like this. Spotting targets is more the job of the aircraft carrier. While the destroyer can do it, their primary role is more to provide smoke for their battle group, to capture flags and to contest flags that are about to be captured by the enemy team. Now, if you pay attention... Oh, Elrog's managed to cap Charlie. That's great news. So he doesn't need to hang around in here anymore. You can see, by the way, that he has the position finding skill active, so he knows at all times the rough direction of the nearest enemy ship to him. But pay attention to the minimap in particular for where the various air groups are going, because while the battleships and the cruisers and the destroyers are positioning themselves, there's a sort of dance going on in the air between the 2 aircraft carrier players. They're both jockeying for domination of the airspace over the caps. You can see that Elrog was able to cap Charlie completely uncontested because of the screen that had been put up by his team's aircraft carrier, which prevented the enemy aircraft carrier from getting fighters overhead and spotting him while he was capping. Now, while this has been going on, the other Benson on OMNI's team has been parked just inside the border of the Bravo cap circle, Again, with a catapult fighter launched from one of the battleships on his team directly overhead, and another squadron of fighter aircraft from Omni's carrier patrolling the centre of the cap circle and keeping enemy fighter aircraft at bay. However, just as Omni were about to cap Bravo, against all odds have managed to sneak a destroyer into Bravo and have arrested the progress on the cap. And that destroyer has just been spotted. So Elrog, with his job done in Charlie, is now heading in the general direction of Bravo to see what he can do to assist over there. His smoke screen is going to dissipate very, very soon, but that's alright, because his team have a Kutuzov over there, whose job it is going to be to maintain that smoke bubble and keep the battleships further to the rear from being spotted. And there's that destroyer. Getting spotted in a destroyer in competitive play is incredibly bad news. Elrog's smoke generator is now back up. He's now dropping smoke for the Chapayev. The Chapayev, always a popular pick in competitive Tier 8 battles because it comes equipped with a radar consumable. He's now sitting pretty inside the smoke screen dropped by Elrog. The Chapayev's gunfire has forced Sexy Kraken in against all odds as Benson out of Bravo. FTD in Omni's other Benson has just successfully capped Bravo. Omni now hold Bravo and Charlie against all odds. Hold Alpha, and Elrog and FTD have just done a quick handover in the middle of Bravo and exchanged positions. FTD retiring from Bravo after having fired his torpedoes. You can see them just up ahead there, straight into the smoke screen, dropped by Sexy Kraken as he was forced out of the cap circle. So now Omni have 2 capture points compared to against all odds 1. The ball is firmly in against all odds' court. They are the team that now have to start taking risks. Omni can sit on these 2 capture points for the rest of the game and win. They have the lead in points. They're going to gain points faster because they've got 2 flags to AAO's 1. They don't have to do anything now other than sit and try to predict what AAO are going to do in order to regain the initiative. So with Omni sitting pretty on a lead that's only going to get bigger the longer they sit on it, now would seem like a pretty good time to switch over to the perspective of Against All Odds. This is Nightmare 911 of Against All Odds. He's in the Bismarck German Tier 8 battleship, and he's doing his level best to delete as many of Omni's cruisers as is humanly possible in the narrow window of opportunities that he has when they're visible. And considering that's a Kutuzov he's firing at, and the Kutuzov comes with its own smokescreen, they're not likely to stay visible for much longer. However, take a look at the map, because this is the first time we've actually seen the battle unfolding from Against All Odds perspective. In particular, have a look over here. That is the gap between the islands where Sexy Kraken's Benson dropped his smokescreen and where FTD and Elrog GA have been firing salvos of torpedoes. Turns out it's not just Sexy Kraken's Benson who's lurking in that gap between the 2 islands. Against All Odds also have a cruiser and a battleship heading in that direction. AAO's carrier player also has a squadron of fighter aircraft orbiting overhead to ensure that they spot any torpedoes well in advance if they're fired down into that gap. You'll notice that they also have a squadron of dive bombers circling over Nightmare 911's Bismarck for exactly the same purpose. In competitive play, you'll often see that a carrier player, after the dive bomber has dropped his bombs, they won't immediately return to the carrier to rearm, refuel and take off again, because once a dive bomber is free of the weight of its bombs, it suddenly becomes a very, very fast scout. And I'm pretty sure that that's what the dive bombers are being used for at the moment. Now, Nightmare 911 does not have a target spotted in that smoke screen, but he's firing anyway. He's looking for the muzzle flashes of the ships firing out of the smoke. There you go, Citadel hit scored. One of the players on AAO, he's in the Amagi by the way, his name is Blood Legend, is particularly adept at doing this. He equips his Amagi with a spotter plane rather than a catapult fighter. Now you might be sitting there thinking, what's the point of that? Surely the Amagi's got extremely long range guns in the first place. Yes it does, but that's not the point. And oh, that is going to leave a mark. This is how quickly everything can turn to shit in a competitive game. Ginger General in the Chapayev on Omni has lit up Nightmare 911 with his radar. And they've obviously been communicating amongst themselves because that's exactly when the torpedo drop comes in. The second Nightmare 911 realised that he'd been detected by radar and he saw those bombers coming in, he got his catapult fighter airborne, and that's what saved him from taking more than one torpedo there. but he is still spotted, and he is coming under some heavy and accurate fire from those enemy ships on Omni. That one torpedo hit was fairly significant though, because aside from causing damage, it also caused flooding and knocked his steering out. So he used his damage control ability, and it was still active when he took another salvo of high explosive from the enemy Kuchezov, which immediately set him on fire. Luckily, with the damage control active, it not only extinguished the existing fires, stopped the flooding, fixed his steering, but it also immediately extinguished the second fire. So he's more or less out of the woods, although he is still spotted and he is still in range. But very soon he should be able to make it into the safety of the island up ahead. Nightmare's not in any great rush to get around the side of this island, however. He's got XTHD's Amagi there on Omni in visual range, and well, that works both ways. XTHD is determined to do as much damage as possible to Nightmare 911, as is the rest of Omni, before he can make it around the corner of this island. But he's not going at full speed. He obviously wants to make the most of the shots on visible targets while he can, but he's going to take a significant amount of damage doing it if he's not careful. No smoke as yet from the Kuchezov or either of the destroyers. Nightmare takes more hits from XTHD's Amagi. There's fire coming in from the cruisers. He's not been set on fire. He's taken his time getting around the side of this island. He's now detected by aircraft. So getting into the cover of the island is, well, not really in any kind of cover at all. Can XTHD's Amagi still lob shells over that island and hit him? I guess we're going to find out. Omni still control two of the flags. They still have a commanding points lead. So far, neither team has actually lost a ship. And yep, XTHD's Amagi can still hit him from here. And Nightmare 911's guns are occluded, or at least some of them are. Yep, the two rear turrets cannot actually be brought to bear because the island, this close, is interfering with the elevation of the gun, so he can only fire at him with his two forward turrets. However, Captain Schnitzel over there in the Benson has now sneaked into Bravo, and he is laying a smokescreen. So it's only now that Nightmare 911 starts putting on some speed and moves forward into the cover of the smoke. But anyway, we were talking earlier about why would you take something like a spotter aircraft when you could take a catapult fighter on a battleship like the Amagi, for example, which Blood Legend, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear, he's spotted again. This time it's the radar again, isn't it? Here it comes. Here comes the pain. Oh, not so much damage there. No, it's all adding up. That's a lot. And he's on fire again. Oh, great. But he's no longer detected. And fire's out. He'll be able to start recovering some health soon as well. They're still firing blind into the smoke. But what they're going to be watching for when they're firing into the smoke is the muzzle flashes. That's a lot of torpedoes. Those are from Elrog, by the way, in the Benson that we saw earlier. Yes, what they're going to be watching for is the muzzle flashes, if you like, of the ships firing out of the smoke. Now, if you do take a spotter aircraft on a battleship like the Amagi, and Blood Legend, from Against All Odds, is known to do this, what the spotter aircraft does is it gives you an elevated view, so it gives you a much, much better viewpoint for estimating where to fire your guns blind into a smokescreen in order for those shots to connect with the muzzle flashes that you can see firing out of the smokescreen. So they don't take them for the increased range that the spotter aircraft gives you. They take it for that elevated view, which makes it easier for you to hit a target that's firing blind at you out of a smokescreen. Speaking of Blood Legends Amagi, by the way, you can see where he is on the map. Well, just barely. I'll point it out for you. You see him? Just down there? Yeah. You wouldn't have thought it was possible to be that sneaky in a ship as large as the Amagi, but he's about to sneak into Charlie. And the timing for this is going to be quite important, because there's an Akazuki on Against All Odds, played by Gavin, who's just launched some torpedoes into the smokescreen over there on the southern edge of the Bravo cap circle. And those torpedoes, you can see them going in, they're going to connect with the target. That's FDD's Benson, and he is the only ship on Omni, there it is, who is contesting the capture of Bravo. And that is exactly what Omni were waiting for. Afreiden in the Kuchezov starts laying smoke. That's going to cover himself. And Lock and Power in the Amagi Sexy Kraken comes steaming forward in the Benson. He starts laying smoke for Nightmare 911 in the Bismarck. Sexy Kraken is not going to hang around inside the smokescreen. Remember, the smokescreen is not for the destroyers, it's for the battleships and the cruisers. Likewise, Captain Schnitzel over there, loitering around outside the smokescreen. Enemy aircraft were spotted in that direction. The Bensons come with the defensive fire cooldown. Omni have now lost Bravo. But worse than that, they're also in the process of losing Charlie because Blood Legends Amagi has picked this moment to sneak in from the south, slide into the cap circle, and take up residence behind one of the islands. Omni now have no points coming in unless they start sinking some ships. And funnily enough, it's at that precise moment when XTHD's Amagi finally finds the target he was looking for and sinks Gaven's Akazuki with direct shell fire. But is it going to be enough? There are less than 5 minutes of this match remaining. Omni still have the lead, but they're running out of targets to shoot at, and without any steady supply of points coming in from controlling the cap circles, they need to find targets to shoot at and they need to sink them, or they need to take these cap circles back. Sounds like the perfect time to go back to Elrog GA of Omni in the Benson. Now we join him just as he witnesses the destruction of FTD's Benson at the hands of Gaven's Akazuki's torpedoes. Elrog has blown all of the charges of his smoke consumable, keeping his team covered. So he leaps straight into the cap circle, wastes no time whatsoever, taking advantage of FTD's smokescreen to jump in there, and while the enemy team were momentarily spotted as they broke cover to push into Bravo, he gets some torpedoes away. What Elrog has to do now is take over the role that FTD was playing before he got himself torpedoed. And he got himself torpedoed, by the way, not through any fault of his own. There were no friendly aircraft overhead to spot those torpedoes being fired into the smokescreen for him. Unfortunately, the carrier just can't have aircraft everywhere, particularly in the last few minutes of the battle when most of both carriers' aircraft have been shot down. What Elrog has to do now is stay in Bravo to prevent, against all odds, from completing the capture, keep his head on a swivel, particularly for the remaining enemy aircraft, because if they spot him, he doesn't have a smokescreen anymore, and he will have to bug out and give up Bravo to against all odds. Now, while it's true that Omni's aircraft carrier is low on aircraft, that's also true of Against All Odds' carrier, and that's going to have consequences. Against All Odds also have no aircraft overhead. More importantly, their destroyers are also inside the smokescreen, which means they get zero warning, none whatsoever, of Elrog's torpedoes until it is far, far too late. Lock and power in the Amagi takes a hit. The Kuchesov is down. AAO have also just lost their Atago, and for a moment Omni are at 909 points until Lock and Power in the stricken Amagi finally manages to take out Ginger General in the Chapayev. Omni are still holding on to a clear lead of over 200 points, but down south Blood Legend in the Amagi is just about to finish capturing Charlie, and he is seconds away from doing it, completely alone and unsupported, until Omni's aircraft carrier hits him with a dive bomber strike. Now that was actually a calculated risk from Blood Legend. He took the hit on the chin from the dive bombers in order to focus his limited anti-aircraft firepower on the understrength squadron of torpedo bombers that were coming in from the other side. And he has managed to shoot those torpedo bombers down, and is once again building up capture points on Charlie. And then Against All Odds catch a lucky break. Elrog's been spotted. Well, I say luck, but luck had nothing to do with it. Elrog's been spotted by Garfield dive bombers. And this is why Bensons carry the defensive fire cooldown in competitive play. It's not really so much the threat posed by direct attack from the dive bombers, it's the fact that they've spotted him. He needs to beat those guys off. Look at the fire that's coming in. Bend over and grab your ankles, boys. His own carrier has vectored fighters to cover him and chase those dive bombers away, but it's too late. He's been forced to abandon Bravo. Bravo is now firmly in the hands of Against All Odds. They are going to capture it. Blood Legend and the Amagi has completed the capture of Charlie. Omni now hold no capture points. They still have that points lead, but it's no longer that big. They've lost Alpha, they've lost Charlie. They've managed to reset the capture progress on Bravo, but that's going to depend on those ships in Bravo remaining spotted. Elrog's getting shot up by Blood Legends Amagi now. He just can't catch a break. This is what it's like playing a destroyer. I mean, it's like this in random battles as well, but even more so. in competitive play, because destroyers are so instrumental in taking and holding and contesting the capture of these capture points. And of course now Omni have got no eyes on that big old blob of against all odds ships who have just finished capturing Bravo as well. Omni still have the lead, but they've got no points coming in unless they start sinking ships. And with the exception of Blood Legends and Margi, they can't see any ships to shoot at. And Blood Legend over there, he's not stupid. He's going to be getting that ship into concealment, or making himself as difficult a target as possible. So, Elrog fires his torpedoes blind into the smoke. Sneaks back into Bravo. Now, he's not going to capture Bravo, but he's at least going to ensure that against all odds are going to stop receiving points from holding Bravo. And then disaster strikes for Omni. Lock and Power in the Yamagi, hidden in that smokescreen over there, has taken out Mr. D Seeds Kuchizov, and now suddenly Omni are no longer ahead on points, and against all odds hold all of the flags. And just when you thought things couldn't get any worse for Omni, it's Captain Schnitzel in the Benson, and he's seen Elrog. And this, Omni's Gunship 14 in the Kuchizov reacts instantly and obliterates Captain Schnitzel's Benson. Now this does momentarily put Omni ahead on points, but it's not the points that is crucial at this stage. It's the fact that with Captain Schnitzel dead, and with no aircraft overhead, there's nobody in a position to spot the torpedoes that Elrog has fired into that smokescreen. The enemy carrier is more concerned with finishing off Elrog, and that's going to be critical, because while Elrog is desperately trying to stay alive, his torpedoes hit and sink Lock and Power in the Amari. Watch this torpedo. Look at that! Ran out of steam within inches of the side of his ship. But despite holding all three of the flags, it's pretty much game over for Against All Odds. They just don't have enough ships left. They've lost too many ships too quickly in the dying seconds of this match to make good on their territorial gains. Right after Lock and Power's Amagi went down, Nightmare 911 was forced to turn towards the torpedoes. He still took one on the chin. He's been lit up by the Chapayev's radar. They finally managed to get in close enough to light up the Bismarck. Turning sideways on, in order to avoid the torpedoes, made him a sitting duck for the broadsides from the Omni ships inside the smokescreen off on the starboard beam. And it's all over for Against All Odds. Victory was just within their grasp, but in the dying seconds of this battle, last season's finalists Against All Odds were taken out in this first round match by Omni. And there's plenty more of this coming up this weekend on Sunday. I'll be commentating on the finals along with Isolate and Chrysantos. Full details down below in the video description. There'll be multiple Twitch live streams. You can see the leaderboards, you can see the map picks, all at the links in the video description. Hope to see you there on Sunday. Until then, take care, enjoy your weekend, and I'll catch you next time.